One of the most famous and beloved films in history was almost never made. It posed a particular challenge, and the filmmakers had seemingly given up. But one man had an idea to save it. He could see things that others couldn't. You likely wouldn't recognize his name. He never got the recognition he deserved. But he is one of the great immigrant success stories who saved an American icon.
With a smile and a song, life is just like a bright sunny day or day.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a hit at the box office in 1938. No one had ever seen anything like it. It's a tough act to follow, even for Walt Disney.
It was hard enough with Snow White to convincingly animate human figures, to invest drawn characters with enough emotion and personality that you cared about them for the duration of a feature film. And now you're going to do this with animals?
Disney's next act,
Don't you remember me?
Bambi.
Why, it's the young prince, Bambi.
But it's not working. One member of the crew has an idea. He's not a high-level filmmaker, but he is an accomplished artist who is hired to be one of the many who paints all the cells needed to bring animated figures to life.
This is the color palette that we're working with. This is the mood or the weather, that we're imagining.
Walt Disney is impressed. No easy task. And American icons Disney and Bambi are saved by a Chinese immigrant.
So let's get together and sing what it knows, sing what it knows, sing what it knows.
A camera captures life. A paintbrush creates it. With a palette, the creative possibilities are endless.
Some people have described my art sort of as stained glass with watercolor.
Tony Moy is a self-taught comic book artist. The tools may look similar from one artist to the next, but Tony says one important element of his work is his culture.
I kind of end up combining bits of my own Asian heritage and philosophy about having those quiet moments, especially when I'm doing my comics, focusing on the environment instead of just the action.
That's exactly the artistic lesson of Tyrus Wong. At the age of 10, he arrives in San Francisco from China in 1920. He has a talent for calligraphy.
At this very early age, Tyrus developed this mastery with the brush. And I think that served a lot of purposes in his father's eyes, right? It kept his son connected to Chinese culture. It kept his son out of trouble.
Karen Fang is a professor at the University of Houston. She says Wong develops into a significant artist. At age 22, his work is on display at Chicago's Art Institute with Matisse and Picasso.
Everyone has already been pointing to him as a rising young artist, and so at least one or two of his fine art prints make it into that exhibit.
Making a living as an artist is still a challenge, especially when you have a family. He takes a job at Disney and sees the problem artists are having with making Bambi and friends come to life.
He sort of figures maybe what Bambi needs is a little bit more of an evocative background, something like the kinds of evocative landscapes that you see in Chinese art.
In Snow White, the backgrounds are very realistic. But in nature, animals evolve with features that allow them to seemingly disappear in their environment. Camouflage is a survival trait, but it becomes a problem when an animal is supposed to be the star of the show.
If you can still create the feeling of the forest without painting every leaf and tree, those animals that they had worked so hard, to develop and that are so central to the story, because you have to care about those animals, right? Those animals can sort of stand out, that you can follow them and they can win your hearts and everything.
He stopped and looked at me.
Yes, I know.
Why was everyone stale when he came on the meadow?
Bambi is not an immediate box office smash, but eventually becomes one of the most beloved films thanks to Wong's insight about the background. The name of Fang's book, Background Artist.
A background artist as a metaphor for an immigrant, I think, is perfect because it really captures the ways that they contribute to and enrich our lives, and a way in which we need to sort of, look into the background to see what we're gaining from them.
Because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, Wong can't even become a citizen.
There's always been in American history this fundamental contradiction between this appreciation for Asian aesthetics and a distaste for the Chinese body or Chinese community.
Wong inspires future artists like Tony Moy.
Looking at how he saw lights and created action and movement is inspiring, especially when I do comics, right? You're taking a still shot in a panel and you're trying to make it dynamic.
His latest comic addresses a chapter of history that reveals heroism and discrimination. The 442nd Battalion includes 10,000 Japanese Americans who fight for America in Italy and France.
And became the most decorated unit. And many of them were fighting while their families or they themselves came from the internment camps.
They earn 18,000 medals. They rescue 200 Texas soldiers behind enemy lines and are among the first soldiers to liberate Dachau concentration camp.
So if you look at sort of the historical irony on that, your family might be behind barbed wire at home in the internment camps and you're liberating a version of those camps in Europe.
Most of these Japanese American artists are then interned. Their careers are, irrevocably hampered in some way. Many of them are never able to recover from that.
My name is Frank McCloud. I'm about 12 miles off Boot Key Harbor on my way in.
Wong moves from Disney to Warner Brothers, helping make major motion pictures like Key Largo and Rebel Without a Cause.
During that time when he's first hired, of course, he worked on a bunch of war films, which he loved doing, and also a bunch of westerns. He loved John Wayne movies, and he initially starts working for John Wayne.
On the side, he's painting art for Christmas cards.
Here's this former alien excluded from citizenship, essentially a paper son, living under a sort of doctored identity, and he's making these patently hybrid fusion-style cards where it's, Christian imagery presented with, Chinese-style brushwork. That's a huge achievement and even more meaningful for somebody who, belongs to a community that for so many decades America was trying to marginalize.
He even gets fan mail. In the golden age of Christmas cards, he becomes known as America's favorite Christmas card designer. Credited as a background artist, he never gets much of the credit with Disney, but in 2001, Disney finally recognizes him as a legend for saving Bambi. In 1968, he retires at the age of 59. Wong says he's all painted out, but still has an interest in creating. He builds kites, infusing Western and Asian styles.
He says, I used to go fishing a lot, but with fishing, you look down. Now I do kites, because with kites, you always look up. And I think that really distills Tyrus's view in the world, right? That, whatever the world throws at you, you should always just focus on transcendence.
Tyrus Wong dies in 2016 at the age of 106.
All immigrants are background artists, but immigrant artists like Tyrus Wong are particularly fascinating, both for how their work enriches our world and how they refuse to stay in the background. As with his work for Bambi, Tyrus was always simply an artist.
Karen Fang's book is called Background Artists: The Life and Work of Tyrus Wong.